Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Ask Me Anything for the CrossFit Linchpin private track. This is June 10th, 2021, and got a lot of good questions, and we'll dive right in. The first and most upvoted one was from Amanda N. And Amanda says, serious question. Anything which starts with serious question is a good question. I recently found myself borderline obsessed with books written by Navy SEALs. Not gonna lie, I find myself wondering if you've worked with them at any point or trained with them. Of course, most of the names are changed, so my question is, have you considered writing a book? I think you'd have a pretty interesting book from stuff about being a SEAL, CrossFit stuff, etc., etc. Can you please write one? Also, last time it was asked if Adrian Bosman could come on the Ask Me Anything. He's cool, but I think your wife would be way more interesting. Want to hear more stuff about her CrossFit pregnant stories, etc., etc. And that got very much upvoted also for Emily to come on. So we should have Emily on one more time. Like I said, she's going to give birth in just under 3 weeks. So to say that she has been scaling or modifying her CrossFit workouts would be an understatement. You know, she's making some radical adjustments to do what she needs to do. And that's cool. Maybe at one time we get Emily back on. I'd like to work her in a bit more. She doesn't like being on camera, and I can't, it's not maybe what it seems, It can be stressful at times, and that's just not her cup of tea. So maybe we can talk her into it a bit more, and I'll try to get Bosman on there as well. Okay, getting back to the book thing. Man, SEALs and their books, right? I mean, there's some SEALs putting out some books. You would think that one of the phases of SEAL training was some sort of literature course or something like that. First of all, thank you, very, very kind, Amanda, to think that if I wrote a book, anyone in the world would want to read it. So I that's very kind of you. I appreciate that. You know, I don't know if I'm embarrassed to admit it, but maybe I kind of am, that yes, it has crossed my mind, but I don't want to say not the classic SEAL book, but kind of not the classic SEAL book. Like that wouldn't be the main character in my book, so to speak. There are obviously, it was one of the most profoundly impactful phases of my life, and so that certainly shaped who I am as a person, beliefs, drive, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that could be tied in, and maybe some ways that folks could harness that or learn from some of my lessons learned. But a lot more of it would just be life lessons, because I have excelled at doing things wrong over and over and over again. My goodness. And so a lot of life lessons learned have come from that. And that would be a major part of the book. And on my phone, under the notes section of my phone, when random thoughts, ideas, topics, themes, points do enter my head that I feel would be worthwhile and could be fleshed out into bigger topics, I've got a running list on my phone that'll add that thought on there so that I don't lose it for the future, if, where the heck I'd find the time, but if one day this does actually manifest itself. So yeah, I kind of have that list, and I kind of have a rough idea of where I'd like to go with it, but I don't know when I could potentially get around to it. I may have to bring in somebody else to help or something like that. So I'm going to give you a definite maybe. A definite maybe. I would like to, but I think what I also know from a couple of buddies who have written books is just, if you want to do it right and do it well, and I would want to obviously do it properly, it's a tremendous time commitment. A tremendous time commitment, which currently, from CrossFit Linchpin, driving this community where it needs to go and providing everything that they need to provide, projects that I'm working on with Beyond the Whiteboard, family, 2 kids, third one on the way, trying to keep myself in some sort of physical condition. It would be, I think, unrealistic at this time, but it's there, and I keep adding to that list, so I'm going to give you a potentially in the future for that question. Okay, Next most upvoted one was from TK. Here we go. Fantastic question, TK. Fantastic. Here we go. I'd love some advice on scaling linchpin workouts for masters athletes, including mobility modifications for the older set. Is there a specific set of metrics you use to scale different masters age divisions, for example? Particular movements you'd recommend always subbing, for example, step-ups instead of box jumps, risers for a handstand push-up, that sort of thing. I mean, that's just a pitch right over the plate. Love it. Anytime we talk scaling or modifying workouts, I mean, it's just one of the things that we always circle back to at Linchpin because I think it's so mission critical for everyone to have a long, happy, healthy career in functional fitness, in CrossFit. Understanding how to scale and modify workouts is a cornerstone of that. And I don't care if you're 20 years old or 65 years old, irrelevant. You should try to improve your knowledge of scaling. So, all right, so TK, getting to your questions. Yes, but no. Sorry to start the question that way. Just because if you've got 10 55-year-old athletes standing in front of you, there's not going to be just a 55-year-old version of the workout that's going to fit all of them. And I'm not talking about competition, okay? If you sign up for the Open or you do some sort of competition, well, they can't provide each individual athlete with what is most beautifully appropriate for their particular body and capacity, so they have to provide broad brush general changes or modifications, so maybe if the workout in the Open is Diane, 2159, 225 dead for the gentleman, and handstand push-ups. That workout might stay the same and might stay unchanged for the Open division, 35 through 39, 40 to 44, 45 to 49, and probably 50 to 54. There'll be no change in that workout whatsoever. You'll be expected to do that loading, and you will be expected to do handstand push-ups, full range of motion. And then at 55 plus, you'll probably see a change, for example, in this workout, with regards to loading, and they will probably modify the handstand push-ups in one way, shape, or form, and that's it. You get one modification. That might work great for you, but again, if you've got 10 55-year-olds standing there, half of them might be like, I don't need a lower weight. I can pull 2159 with the prescribed loading just fine, so don't give me a modified loading. I don't want that. And the other half might be like, well, good for you, but I can't do that, so yes, I'm going to go down to 205 or 185. Or you know what? I'm going to stick with the prescribed loading, but I'm going to do 15, 12, 9. I'm not going to do reps of 2159. And that's just on the deadlift portion. Then you might have half of them that are like, what, last year when I was 54, I can do handstand push-ups, but now the one calendar year has gone by, you're telling me that I can't? I can still do them. I'm going to do them. And the other half are like, well, great, I couldn't even do them 10 years ago, so I do need the scale. So again, in my opinion, what's more important than saying, hey, this is the master's scale, hey, this is the whatever particular sort of scale, it's understanding the broad concept of what scaling is and the general concept, the theme, why it's important, and then what you can do is you can take that knowledge base and apply it to any workout, any age athlete, any whatever it happens to be, and make a good decision. So that's why just the general topic of scaling, I think, is more important. So because no two 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, or 60-year-olds are generally the same. They've all got some needs. And even, somebody like myself, it couldn't even be an age thing. It's an injury thing, from motorcycle wrecks and injuries that I've had in the military. I've got terrible shoulders. I don't really need to scale anything that's below parallel weight or pulling from the ground. Now, suddenly, if we're going overhead, I'm going to scale going overhead more than an 85-year-old athlete, even though I'm nowhere near their age. So again, I don't particularly fall into the scaling for my age division either. So it's a highly individual thing, highly individual. So the broad concepts of scaling, um, but before we get there, I also think what can potentially mess with some people is that you're thinking that you have to scale or modify because whatever you saw was the prescribed or RX workout seemed maybe a bit too robust, a bit too challenging, a bit too technically difficult, a bit too heavy, whatever it happened to be. And I'm not saying that this happened to you, TK, but it definitely happens to athletes. So just if this applies to somebody, take it on board. I highly encourage you not to let that, to have that little badge, that RX badge, do not let that have any power over you. Zero power. Who cares if something's RX'd? It's irrelevant. 100% irrelevant if you do a workout prescribed. Does not matter at all. What matters is that you make the best choice for you on that day based upon your capacities and what the workout is. That is all that matters. The heck with RX. Who cares? So, and all that workout of the day is, just consider the workout of the day, the suggestion of the day. There's a great one for it, okay? Because the workout of the day or the suggestion of the day, that just means, okay, it's prescribed because that's what was presented. Let's think about it that way. I'm presenting this to you, so this is what I'm prescribing today for you to do. But you then look at what has been prescribed, what has been presented or suggested, and then the decision is made as to whether or not that's appropriate for you. And then you modify it as needed. That's it. That's literally it. It's just that simple. But I think some people, like I'm not saying that this applies to TK, that RX is just like a shiny gold object, and that's the workout, and that's the only right way to do it, and a modification is less worthy or less effective. None of that is true. None of it is accurate. The prescribed, for example, workout of the day, at its most base form, most fundamental offering, it is just what is appropriate and makes sense on that day based upon where we've been with our working out and where we're going. And so I would rather have people pay attention to the general concepts than the quote-unquote what the prescribed, the fact that I can't modify this. So what I mean, for example, is let's say on day one of working out, we hinged at the hip. Okay, we did deadlifts, we pulled from the ground, we hinged at the hip. On day two, we've got bike sprints and pull-ups. All right. What's important is, we hinged at the hip on day one. Well, that's not why we're not hinging at the hip on day two. And day one was maybe a 5x5 deadlift. Day two is bike sprints and pull-ups, maybe some sort of interval style work. So 2 different workouts. And so the more important to understand is why we're doing what we're doing on any particular day, because we're trying to move our body through various ranges of motion, various rep schemes, various loading, and not the exact loading. Okay, the exact loading is not what matters, but the general concept of the loading. Is it a lighter day, a more moderate day, or a heavy day? And then what's light or moderate or heavy for you? That's good to go. So on something like that 5x5 day on day one when we were hinging at the hip, it's an easy one to modify for most people, right? Because you can just lift whatever's appropriate for you on a 5x5, from some huge weight on the bar to a very lightweight to a broom handle. So relatively easy to scale that day. And if range of motion is an issue, you could pull a deadlift off of some plates or blocks on the ground, shorten the range of motion. So again, there's things that we can do, and everybody can enjoy that 5x5 day, almost regardless of age. The next day, bike sprints and pull-ups done, let's just say interval style, something like 30 seconds hard on the bike, 1 minute rest, 30 seconds of pull-ups, 1 minute rest, 30 seconds on the bike, 1 minute rest, 30 seconds, so just back and forth like that. Again, that's another We're not pulling from the ground. We're not loading the body that day like we did the day before, so we're getting some nice variance. This is not this is just things that are popping into my head, just so you know, this is just examples. But this could also be, almost regardless of age, you just work hard for the bike on 30 seconds, for 30 seconds. So that's, again, nicely scalable, almost regardless of your capacity. Well, now the other part, pull-ups, that might come into play a bit, right? You've got some just young, fire-breathing athlete who's, 25 years old and does 30 seconds of continuous, unbroken butterfly pull-ups each time and wonderfully recovers in that minute. And, that's what their high-intensity interval looks like that day. Great. Well, let's say we've got our 50-year-old, 55-year-old, 60-year-old athlete that wants to do the same thing, but they're not going to just be whipping around doing butterfly pull-ups for 30 seconds, most likely. Some are, for sure. Hey, and if they can safely do it, rock on. But if the other one's like, that's not me, I'm going to get 2 pull-ups, and by the way, I don't do butterfly pull-ups anymore. I do the gymnastic style C-kip, and I'll get 6 in that 30-second window. 6 might be appropriate if that's good, hard, and challenging for them. But what if they can't do that? Well, no worries. They can do ring rows. And it shouldn't be seen, in my opinion anyway, as a lesser experience for that athlete because they're quote-unquote scaling it or modifying it. It's not a bad word. Scaling's cool. RX is for chumps. So just you're mimicking the stimulus of the movement, which is an upper body pull. And that just comes back to the prescribed workout of the day as a suggestion based upon where we've been and where we're going, and then you just massage it or tweak it based upon your needs or the needs of your athlete. Bike sprints, upper body pulling. Lots of different ways to do that. You could use a band if you wanted to, but we can get it in almost for anybody. And let's say they didn't have that, well, they could do some bent over rows, with light dumbbells or light barbell or whatever the barbell weight or dumbbell weight that's appropriate. We can get in some upper body pulling. The next day we're going to go below parallel. We're going to do everyone's favorite, thrusters. We're going to do thrusters and double unders and running. Just a bomb. 3 rounds for time, 15 thrusters. No, how do we start this? It's not even a real workout, but I'm getting myself concerned about how I'd structure it. So let's just say it's 3 rounds for time, 400-meter run, 50 double unders, 15 thrusters, because how terrible would that be to have the thrusters at the end in sets of 15, 3 sets of 15. So 3 rounds for time, 400-meter run, 50 double unders, 15 thrusters at the Fran weight, 95 pounds or 65 pounds. Disgusting. Actually, we should probably program that for Linchpin. Well, day 1 we hinged at the hip, we went heavy. Day 2 we didn't have any loading, didn't go below parallel, didn't hinge at the hip, bike sprints paired with an upper body pull. On day 3, we're going below parallel, we're pressing overhead, and we're having a longer, monostructural component with the running. We got the double unders in there, and yep, we're moving our body, but nowhere near the intensity of like bike sprints, for example. And the loading, in general, a Fran-style loading, would be considered, I would say, and these days things might be changing, but a moderate thruster loading. Okay, that's a big strike zone, but a moderate thruster loading to maybe the lighter side of moderate is that Fran loading. And so for you, whether you're 35, 45, or 55, what's a moderate to slightly lighter moderate side thruster for you or whatever athlete it is that you're trying to scale or modify this workout for? That's the workout, that's the loading which would be appropriate for you. And then in the video of the day, we would talk about the intention behind the workout, how you would attack it, and potentially, hey, when you come in, that loading that you choose for the thrusters, you should have no question that in round 1, you're going to be able to do those 15 thrusters unbroken. Now, I know that you could run so hard to make that impossible, but you're running moderately hard, keeping yourself uncomfortable. You hit the double unders, and then you should be able to pick up that barbell, not be happy about it, but be able to safely execute the 15 thrusters. Round 2, most likely there's going to be, let's say, 1 dropping of the bar to get to that set of 15 thrusters. That's if you didn't sandbag the run to be a barbell hero. Don't be that person. And then on round 3, we're just going to go ahead and get through them. Might be 1 break, might be 2 breaks. It's the 3rd round. And so some information like that can help athletes make good decisions as to how to modify the workout for them. And then, we could go, again, just keep this train going as to why workouts are prescribed on the day that they're prescribed, how the body's moving, looking at the prescribed workout as the intent, the suggestion, and then you modify it for your needs. And that's just keeping in mind the themes and the concepts of scaling or modifying workouts in general, which is you want to preserve the stimulus, preserve the intent. So the intent on day one with the deads was lifting heavy and hinging at the hip. We can preserve that intent and stimulus. We can modify the loading. We could modify the reps if we wanted to. We control the rest period. Day two, higher intensity monostructural bomb on the bite compared with then some high intensity upper body pulling. So we can preserve the stimulus, preserve the intent, even if we modified it with a band, ring rows, bent over row. But again, we can preserve the intent, preserve the stimulus, and we can play that same game on day three where we had running and double unders and thrusters and etc., etc. Into the best of your ability. So you can scale or modify the load, the repetition range. You can obviously modify the intensity by just downshifting yourself, slowing yourself down, taking more rest, allowing yourself to recover, never compromising your form or mechanics is something anybody should do. And so those big concepts, I think, will treat you well. The only thing which is potentially interesting is you could, of course, modify the range of motion, right? Or even just swap out the movement entirely. Like I said, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but maybe at a certain age, handstand push-ups just aren't going to happen anymore. You're not comfortable with them, don't make sense. No worries. Okay, being inverted is fantastic. It's a great stimulus for your body, but if at some point in time, not comfortable with it, don't like it, doesn't make sense, don't want to do it, fine. Let's still preserve the intent, and we can do a shoulder press or a push press, so we can still get in that pressing that we need to get in one way, shape, or form. So you want to preserve the range of motion as much as possible, and that was an example with handstand push-ups versus a strict press or a push press. But there could certainly be some time, as father time creeps in, and as we get older, that maybe some movements just aren't going to happen anymore. Okay, different timeline for each person. Handstand push-ups, when those come and go, we've got ways to get around it, as I just mentioned. What about something like the full snatch, the barbell snatch? Maybe that doesn't treat somebody well. What if that's in the workout? Well, that's when you would not so much be concerned and wrapped around the axle that I have to do the barbell snatch today, and if I don't, then it's not prescribed, and I'm not getting in the great workout. Let's just think about what the barbell snatch is, right? It's a fast hip opening. It's technically complicated. Coordination, accuracy, agility, and balance are through the roof. The neurological components, we're moving an object from the ground. It winds up overhead while we're below parallel, and then we go ahead and stand up. So there's a big range of motion on it. If we can get that done in some other way, okay, maybe we're not doing exactly a barbell snatch, but that person's not going to be shortchanged for life. So maybe they have whatever barbell weight makes sense for them, and they power snatch it, and then while it's overhead, they do an overhead squat. Covering the same range of motion, still getting in a nice fast hip opening, you're going to be okay. It's not like you're not going to be capable and competent at the grocery store living your life because you did a power snatch into an overhead squat instead of a full snatch. You're going to be great. You'll obviously want a full snatch for as long as you can, but if that day comes, no worries. It's not a day to fear. We've got options as long as we understand how to look at a workout, look at why we're doing that particular movement, and then what's an intelligent way to sub or modify those things. And maybe snatching just of any style doesn't work one day. Okay, we still want to get something from the ground to overhead, and we'd love to go below parallel. So maybe we do a power clean, and then we do a thruster with it. Is it the exact same? Absolutely not. But it's really darn close, and you won't be shortchanged. That power clean will get you a fast, explosive hip opening. And then followed by the thruster will get you the below parallel to overhead. Mission accomplished. We're good. You're totally good. Fit for life. You'll be a ferocious beast. Your Your friends will ask you what you do to be such an absolute amazing human being from physical fitness, and you'll have to be like, wow, geez, really? I scale most workouts. All good. Totally all good. So, yeah, we could play the same game with, maybe you can't do ring muscle-ups. There's ways to use bands. You could do low ring muscle-ups with a lot of feet. Maybe that still doesn't treat you well. Okay, well, let's just get a pull and a push. We'll break it down to doing some pull-ups and we'll do some ring dips. Hey, ring dips don't treat me well. No worries. We'll do some pull-ups. We'll do some bar dips. We'll do some dips off a box or a bench. We'll do some push-ups. We'll do some knee push-ups. We can make it happen. As long as you understand and start to develop a knowledge as to what the movement's accomplishing, what the workout's accomplishing, how the human body moves, we can scale it and modify it anyway. So, yeah, I just love that. I mean, it's a fantastic topic. Everybody, scaling is cool, 100%. Okay. Didn't know I was going to talk for so long on that. My apologies. I went wildly off script. Wildly. Okay. The next question is from Matthew S. Matthew, where are you, sir? Here we go. Okay. So Matthew's question is basically, I'm going to encapsulate it, okay? Because it's he kind of calls it using a theoretical 1 rep max. And so he's saying, for example, can we reverse engineer to find a 1 rep max if we're lifting alone and don't want to truly max out for safety reasons? So he's saying, for example, we've got a 7x1 back squat coming up. And this week's 7x1 back squat. He didn't know what his 1 rep max was. Now the Super Fitness Robot says that if you can maintain, let's see, calculate, what does it say here? I think it was above 70%. I'm trying to read this. Using the fact above 70%, 70 to 90% of your 1 rep max across all sets, you might be the Super Fitness Robot. So split the difference on that and basically say, if you can hold whatever loading you can hold for a 7x1 back squat, let's say you did not know your 1 rep max, but you slowly build up to a weight that you think you can hold for a heavy single, not necessarily a 1 rep max, but a heavy single, rest 3 or 4 minutes, do it again, rest 3 or 4 minutes, do it again, and you can hold that across a 7x1. Is it safe to assume that loading that you were able to maintain for 7 heavy singles is potentially 80% of what your 1 rep max might be? And so you could use that heavy day as a way to guess what your 1 rep is without actually knowing. Could you reverse engineer it that way? I don't think you're too far off. I think I think there's some merit there. I think it will get you darn close. Will it be exact? No, certainly not. But you'll have a pretty good ballpark idea. And I understand, why he's saying this is because if you are squatting by yourself in your garage, it's a 7x1 back squat. You've got some squat stands, but maybe you don't have a spotter or anything like that. You probably don't want to really go for I could potentially fail this 1 rep max. I'm going to get pinned under the bar. You would just want to work up to what's a very challenging, very heavy weight, but one that you're confident that you will have the ability to stand up because you're lifting by yourself. And so, yeah, you're getting in a great heavy day. You're getting all the benefit and stimulus that you want, but you're not quite exactly sure what your true 1 rep is. And that's not exactly something you may or may not find on a 7x1 day. Anyway, you could. That's your day to experiment if you can safely do it. You can hold the same weight across all 7 of those singles if you so desire, or you can go up and down a little bit. Try to go for a new 1 rep max, try to establish one, as long as all of those 7 singles are appropriately challenging. So yes, Matthew, I think you're on the right track, and I think it'll get you close. If you have enough data in your Beyond the Whiteboard app, when you open the app, in the upper left-hand corner, there's 3 little lines. If you click on those 3 little lines, you'll get a drop-down menu, and there's one of the tabs says Lifts Calculator. Tap on Lifts Calculator, and then you can put in the lift that you want, and it'll kind of sift through the data that you have accumulated in Beyond the Whiteboard and try to provide you with what your 1, 3, 5, 10 rep max and things like that could be. So Beyond the Whiteboard is a tremendous resource that can do way more features, quite frankly, than most people realize, myself included. So feel free to play with that as well there in the app. The other thing that I will say is, for the first several years starting CrossFit, I finally got myself a set of like cheap squat stands, but they did not have safety spotter bars or anything like that, and I didn't have a spotter on a regular basis. So when heavy days would come up, I was in the exact same position as you, Matthew. Like I wasn't about to go for like a real true 1 rep max back squat. And so for multiple years, anytime it said heavy back squat, I just did a heavy front squat. And I just didn't back squat, quite frankly, for years due to safety concerns, and I just front squatted. I don't feel that I was shortchanged in any way, shape, or form. And especially with the front squat, as long as you're comfortable with it, is obviously far better suited to ditching the barbell, because you have it in the front rack position, than the back squat. So I felt comfortable personally establishing 1 rep maxes and things like that, because if I just couldn't stand the weight back up, I was comfortable ditching the barbell out there in the front. And so that might be something for you to consider as well, as establish 1 reps with the front squat. And chances are, most people can back squat more than they can front squat. So yes, you may not maximally lift the most weight as compared to what you would lift if you were back squatting, but again, fitness will be achieved. Heavy day will be fantastic. You'll get plenty strong. And the front squat's such a beautiful lift because you just have to have a nice upright torso and body position to have a successful front squat. It's more demanding of flexibility, especially in the upper body with the front rack position. And there's such a nice transferability to thrusters, cleans, things like that. So maybe think about doing the front squat as well. Okay. Let's see. Last couple of questions. Next one is from Eric. Eric, where are we? Okay, here we go. From your experience of years of practicing both CrossFit and calisthenics, what can we learn from calisthenics to improve CrossFit? Another fantastic question. So, calisthenics we can just loosely define as body weight movements, conditioning movements, gymnastics movements, non-externally loaded movements. I might catch some flack for this, but we're friends, right? So I'm going to be honest. I find so many gymnastics movements orders of magnitude more impressive than barbell movements by a long shot. Now, I might be the crazy one, but I see somebody hit a 300-pound snatch, and clearly that's impressive, obviously. But I see somebody do like a straddle press to handstand, and I'm like, whoa, that person is strong, like crazy strong. And that doesn't mean that they can snatch 300 pounds, okay? It's a different deal. But it captures my undivided attention with just the body control and the head-to-toe strength they have, and the grace with their body, quite frankly, to do something like that. And so, yes, I think there's a tremendous amount of gymnastics and calisthenics capacity that I think it's one of the most neglected aspects of what we do every day in the gym. And when I say we, I don't mean CrossFit Linchpin. I mean, we do the unpopular stuff, right? Barbells are popular. It's just raining barbells every day in everybody's workout. And that's fantastic. They're mission critical. They're essential. They develop wonderful fitness. But they're not the whole story. They're a piece of the puzzle. And there are other pieces that are equally, if not sometimes more, important. And those other ones were just, the neglected siblings: conditioning, track work, sprints, and then body weight control and movements in gymnastics. The things that don't look flashy and sexy on Instagram, right? The 300-pound snatch, the big front squat, look at me pull this deadlift. That's going to get far more views than, hey, look at my 60-second L sit. Isn't this an amazing video? It's going to go viral of me not moving for 60 seconds. It's going to be a boring video. But we don't care about what gets clicks or likes. We care about what works. And so, yes, getting back to your question, I think the midline capacity that can be developed through bodyweight movements, through gymnastics and calisthenics, is just unrivaled. And that's going to make all the things that you do with the barbell better. Do you want a bigger front squat, bigger back squat, bigger deadlift, a faster Fran time? Increase your L-sit. Put 30 seconds onto your L-sit and everything's going to get better. So L-sits, candlesticks, planches, windshield wipers, these are just controlling your body with no external loading. And for somebody who neglects them, you could watch somebody pull a monster lift, monster back squat, and initially you're like, wow, this person's so strong. They're so strong. But yet they can't, with no loading, hold their own feet off the ground for 1 minute. And that's not meant to be insulting. That's not meant to be a cut. It's an observation of physical reality on planet Earth, right? I don't make the news. I just report the news. And so that there should be a bit of a disconnect there, right? Like, wow, hundreds of pounds just went from ground to overhead. Now it's tough just to keep our legs off the ground. That might speak to some sort of a weak link in the system, that if we strengthened that area, it would make sense that the overall system would be a better, more functioning, well-functioning system. So, yes, midline capacity, things like straddle press to handstand, and these are things that in the actual world of gymnastics are, you're not even going to get credit for them. They're laughably easy. Somebody who's like a D1 gymnast like my wife, I mean, these are things that are non-issues, right? But for regular folks like us, they're really tough. L-sits are really tough. Candlesticks are really tough. Windshield wipers are really tough. A press to handstand is a heck of a lofty goal that will take months or a year or more to develop, with a huge progression. So we're talking about regular people like us, okay? Not Simone Biles. And then all the not flashy stuff in gymnastics and calisthenics, of the strict work. Dips, strict dips, pull-ups, strict muscle-ups, push-ups, right? Just the most basic movement in the world. But what kills you on Cindy? What kills you on Murph? It's amazing how hard sometimes just moving your body weight with no momentum is. And strengthening your body through those positions will have an immediate and beneficial transference everywhere else. And that's why, again, we do those things at Linchpin. We don't fear the strict work. There's plenty of gymnastics in the programming, plenty of gymnastics in the accessory work, because there's multiple slices to that pie. There's the barbell, there's conditioning, and not just the barbell, but weighted external objects. There's conditioning, engine work, and then we have, of course, body weight work, the gymnastics as well. So, yeah, I think everybody would be well served by spending time improving their ability to move their own body through space. I think it's fantastic, Eric, to be honest with you. And I almost forgot, but one of the first questions that got posted yesterday, and it didn't get upvoted enough to answer it, but I'm going to anyway, was from Arhun R. And Arhun's question was, is there a reason that we don't do weighted pull-ups? Great question. Kind of relates to the body weight movements here, even though now the question becomes, if you weight a body weight movement, does it become a weightlifting movement, or is it still just a body weight movement? So anyway, brain teaser. And I was going to address it if it got upvoted, that the movements that we do, and this is kind of getting back to whose question? The question on scaling from TK, where understanding how the body moved would give you some idea as to the capacity that's developed. So for example, now getting back to Arhun's question, I was going to say, like, hey, all the ways that we pull is probably giving you capacity in a weighted pull-up more than you even realize without doing them, because some workouts, some movements just have a lot of transference and a lot more bang for your buck. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to just put my money where my mouth is. And so this video is in the private track closed Facebook group. So if you're in the Facebook group, you can check it out. So last night I was like, you know what I'm going to do? just going to wander out into the garage. I did a Facebook Live video last night, and I'm just going to establish a 1 rep max weighted pull-up. Put my money where my mouth is. I'm saying that we have all this transference. Let's see it in action, because I've got no clue. I couldn't tell you the last time that I did a weighted pull-up. But I'm saying that we still have the capacity. So let's put my money where my mouth is. Long story short, before I did that, I looked at beyond the whiteboard for the data on a 1 rep max weighted pull-up to see how much weight would I have to do and what percentile would that put me in. And I think if I did one with 70 pounds, that would put me in the 50th percentile, so right in the middle. And then if I did one, I think I had the 60th, 70th, 80th percentile was like 95, 96 pounds or something like that in the 90s. That would get me in the 80th percentile. So 80th percentile means you're in the top 20% of anyone who's ever posted a score for that. So I was like, that would be really cool if literally without doing weighted pull-ups, I could just walk into the garage, build up a little bit of weight, and just be in the top 20% of all the scores that have been posted for that without intentionally trying to do it. So I didn't know if I was going to succeed or fail. So anyway, long story short, walked out there, started the live video so everybody could see this was not fabricated, and worked up and got a 100-pound strict dead hang pull-up. So cool. Without training for it. There's just a 100-pound strict pull-up just in there. But that doesn't happen by accident. That happens because of how we design the programming and the workouts at Linchpin. That's the whole goal of classic CrossFit programming, is that with what seems to be, just the beauty of one workout a day, you get this transference to all these other things. Like, well, but we don't do that. Yes, but you still can, because of these core movements that we do are so powerful that they transfer to other things. And so, yeah, that was cool. Felt like I might have had a bit more in the tank, but figured don't be a hero. Didn't want to just, go for like a true 1 rep and then just feel something go in my back. So called it a day and went out on a high note. So that's that. Okay. We'll end with 2 cool things that I pulled up from just screenshots from the Facebook group of people doing cool things. So the first one is from Christian D. And Christian says he's had a busy last couple of days. He felt just bad, tired. It was 11 p.m. when he made this post. Both his kids are asleep, and he had the discipline to go out into the garage and work out at 11 p.m. instead of missing the workout. So he got in one before bed. That level of discipline, good on you. Hey, we could have another discussion like, but you should get sleep. We get that. But to have that internal motivation and drive and discipline to make a tough choice and to drag yourself into the gym and get something in, it's good for the soul. Good for the body, the mind, and the soul. So Christian, good on you. And the other one I have is from Cameron V. And Cameron V says, okay, basically he removed weight. That's the point of this post, and it warms my heart. That he was going to get in a bit of squatting. He warmed up with some squats, had the weight on the bar that he, had in his head before the workout started. Again, the power of saying something's prescribed, right? You feel this pressure to do it. So he had in his head, this is what I'm going to do today. Warmed up, got to that weight, and realized just not feeling it today, based upon whatever, work, stress, sleep, kids, just not feeling it today. Doesn't feel how it should. Said he struggled with his ego, but basically, again, had the discipline to reject his ego, lower the weight, make a good decision, and had a fantastic workout. And that sounds so simple, right? So obvious when you're just having a casual conversation like, well, yeah, of course. Of course you should just lower the weight. That sounds like a smart thing to do. But we all know that little demon in us, that little ego in us, it can be so hard to make a good decision every now and then. It's easier said than done. So the fact that Cameron actually did, good on you. That's fantastic. Proud of you. So that's it. Another AMA in the books. Enjoy your rest day, everybody, and we will talk later.